So outside of the normal transform options that every asset within After Effects has, Type has a lot of its own kinds of things. And the nice thing about TypeAnimators themselves is they allow us to create some more complex animations with Type than we can do traditionally. And they're really kind of deep. There's a lot to them, but I'm just going to look at some simpler uses of them to start with. And then another night we'll do some more detailed things. But I'm kind of trying also to, as I do some of these things, just to work some other stuff into them, or even go back to things that we've done before, like 3D tools, like the 3D camera and that kind of stuff. So this is mostly about type effectors, but I'm going to bring a couple of those other items in. So, but anyway, so the nice thing about type effectors is that once I create an effect, a type animation, I can actually save that preset and use it again later. So, as we do things like, dynamic type exercises and that kind of stuff, it gives us something to at least start with. I can save those effectors, use them as a jumping off point the next time I want to use them, and I can still modify them, I can still change them for each new instance, but the original one stays in place. So I'm just going to kind of create a quick, do a 1920 by 1080, and actually, maybe I want this import. Let's see if I can find. Let's go. So I'll show you some of the kinds of things that I'm going to look at doing here to start with, and then show you kind of how I build them. But so I've got one here that kind of brings in each individual letter separately, but also kind of overlays an outline kind of effect. I've got another one that does sort of a trace-in kind of a thing, but then has a couple other effects applied to it that give it kind of a continuous motion sort of thing. And then the last one that I have that I had done was actually introduces a 3D camera, and let's go back to one view on this one. When it plays through, is type that kind of falls in like kind of like a roller coaster kind of a thing. And these all use type effectors. So they're just examples of the kinds of things we can do. I'm going to start out with some simpler ones, but kind of work towards these things. They all start out simple. Then it's just a matter of kind of building and layering. And, remember too that within After Effects, we can layer different effects as long as we want. Whether it's an effect, whether it's a type animator, we can layer different animators, and one just builds on the other. So it allows us to start simple and then create gradually more complex looking kinds of things. But at their core, they're simple, and by kind of getting creative with how we handle them, we can make things look a little more complicated than they really are. So these are sort of some of the things that we're going to kind of look at, and I'll see if I can actually get this one right a second time. So I'm just going to start with a new comp and drop a solid into it. Blue is fine. All right. And then I'm just going to set some type. So we'll just animate. And just sort of center that up visually. All right. So starting off with the regular type layer. If I go down here to my timeline and I open up Animate, under text, you'll see that we now have this, there's an animate option here. And if I click on this little play arrow next to it, it gives me a list of things we can do. Text effectors allow me to animate any basic transform, as well as some other features of the text. But it allows me to stack them and to layer them. So I can do multiple transforms at once. And even some other things, like messing with the tracking, the fill, the stroke on them, and that kind of thing. So I'm going to start this off with just a simple position that I'm going to change. And the way animators work is this. I've set the type the way that I want it to be when it's complete. This is how, whenever this animates in, that's what it's going to look like. When I add a type animator, what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this position, and what I want to have happen is each letter come up into position one at a time. So I'm actually going to adjust using this position transform under this animator I just made. I'm just going to drop it down so that like the cap height is right on the baseline or so. So this is where it's going to start, and the way I actually set the type is where it's going to end. So I'm setting its beginning point. I'm going to also add to this, if I go here under the add option for this animator, open that up, I can add other properties, and I'm just going to add an opacity to that as well. And I'm going to set that to 0. So it's going to start here, and it's going to end up and into place. So these are the transforms that I'm affecting. The real work happens here in this range effector. So if I open that up, you'll see that I've got some different options. Start, end, and offset, and then there's an advanced segment, which we need that advanced segment to do most of these things. So, but basically start, end, and offset, set start and end, set the beginning of the affected area and the end of the affected area. So when it says that its start is at 0, that means that along this block of type, at 0 is where we're going to start affecting this, and at 100 is where it's going to end. So beginning to end, basically. If I change these numbers, if I change this to like 42 or 22, and I change the end one to say 80, then when I use this offset, it's only going to affect from here to here. The end ones are staying in place. So there's some different use for that, but just to sort of show you what the start and the end mean, that's what those mean. So I'm going to set this back to 0. I'm going to set this back to 100. And this offset is what I'm going to animate. So I'm going to set keyframe at the very beginning at 0. And then I'm going to move ahead to 2 seconds. And I'm going to change this to 100. So now when I play this through, each of these characters come up into place one at a time. which, think back to any of my examples I had originally, this is the very basic beginning of any of that. So I can easy ease these points, but we've also got, under this advanced, we've got ease high and ease low, which is the equivalent of ease in and ease out. I'm going to set ease high to 100 and see what we get. And let's actually shorten this up so we don't have to watch a bunch of dead space. So in this case, ease high, ease it out of the lower position, but it's kind of clunking into the end. So I'm going to change ease high back down to 0 and set ease low to 100. So that eases into position a little better. Maybe I'll set ease high to like 40. See what that gives us. It's still a little choppy, but it starts to get a little better. So just drop that back down to 0. This isn't the final state that this is going to be in. That at least kind of gets it to ease in a little bit nicer. If I go ahead and I easy ease these keyframes, stop that. At the same time, it just sort of slows the progression at the end. So, one character at a time, that's kind of how we do that. So, and I'm just using the basic, sort of some basic out-of-the-box kinds of settings for the most part right now. If I want to change this to, let's say that my type is actually, instead of just animate, let's say that it's animate, animate, animate. And I've got 3 different lines of text. If I change characters to lines, we're going to do the same thing. It's just going to go line by line. So if you have a block of text you want to animate in, it's far simpler to do it that way than it is to try to animate each individual line in one at a time. So that, you know, and then we can also do this by words, which is going to do the same thing as line here, but because I've only got 1 word on each line. But if I had 5 words on each line, it would just bring 1 word at a time in. So I can do it by character, words, or lines. So let's just go back to characters. And out here, I'm going to get rid of these other 2 lines. And slide this back down. The other nice thing about these animators is that, so I set this right in the middle, but if I want to duplicate this line, this text, and move it around and scale it down, I can do that, and it maintains the animations, and I don't have to worry about making adjustments to position or anything else. They're all contained within the text layer itself. And then, like I said earlier, we can actually save these as well. Under animation, we can actually, I need to select. If I actually select this preset down here, I can go up here and I can save it as RK simple fade up. So I can give it names, and it'll show up in both my presets, my effects and presets panel, as well as up here with these animators. So I can reuse this over and over again. I always prefix, anytime I ever save them, I prefix them with my initials, just because sometimes it stands to reason that you'd have a similar name for your effect as one that already exists. So if I prefix it, then I don't ever have to worry about them clashing or overwriting. So I can do that. And now, you know, create a new composition with my name, center that up, animation, apply animation recent animation presets. There's the one I just made. And now I've done the work, and I can just apply it to whatever animations I want to. When we do title sequences, it's nice to be able to set animation presets like this, because consistency across the type throughout a minute and a half long title sequence helps the whole thing feel relatively consistent and organized. So and once I've applied that, I can go back in still and make whatever adjustments to this I want. It won't affect my original preset. So I'm just going to go back here and find the solid that I put in the other comp, drop it in here. All right, so I'm just going to sort of springboard off of this one. This is a very, like I said, kind of a basic text pop-up. They just kind of come in. You notice as I scrub through here, they're just one character at a time. The R comes in and sits, then the U, then the S, one after the other. What's a much nicer movement is when they start to all come in together, but the motions overlap when they're sort of blended. And we can do that as well. So if I open this text animator back up, text, here's this animator. I should have named it, actually. It really is just good housekeeping to sort of name these things as you go. So I'm going to make some adjustments to this as it is. So before I open advanced, so you notice that I'm using, the shape is square. That's what gives that very linear kind of effect. There are other options here. We've got ramp up, ramp down, triangle, round, and smooth. I'm just going to look at ramp up, ramp down. But if I change square to ramp up, you'll notice that when I scrub across here now, it's not animating the same way. It's because my offset isn't quite right. So if I go back up here to this offset, at the very beginning, it's set to 0. The offset actually runs from negative 100 to positive 100. So with the ramp up, if I drop this down to negative 100, and now I play this through, now it's a little smoother animation. Everything kind of comes up together in sort of a serpentine kind of a manner. So I modified, I changed the shape to ramp up, and then, like I said, negative 100 to 100 is the offset range. If I change this to ramp down, it goes back the opposite direction. So like I said, we can stack these animators as well. So let's change, let's see, I wanted this to be ramp up. Let's change that to back to ramp up the way I wanted it. So that comes up, and I'm going to actually duplicate this fade up. So select it, Command D on my keyboard, and I'm going to change this one to fade down. And in this particular case, I'm just going to change the, or not the offset, I'm going to change the shape from ramp up to ramp down. And then I need to offset my keyframes. So I duplicated this animator, and on the fade down one, if I just tap U on my keyboard, that'll show all of my keyframes. I'm going to grab this. Wait, what do I have? Oh. All right, the top one's fade up, bottom one's fade down. Okay. So it was the bottom one. So I'm just going to select those and slide them over to here, just sort of line them up. So now my type fades in, and then it fades back out again. So I'm just, and all I really did was I stacked two animators on top of each other, and they just build, because it's still all a layered system. Any questions so far about any of that? Okay. So they just all build, like I said, one on another. So if I wanted to add a third animator to this, let's say I want to let's add another animator. I don't know, let's try. Let's try blur. So over the course of this animation, I could set blur to, actually I want to pull this out here, I just want to see, so that I can see. All right, so let's do that. Let's set that nice and blurry. And I want to drop that back here to the beginning. And then duplicate that keyframe. Just select it, copy it, come out here, paste it. And then maybe right here in the middle, I'll go back to 0. So now when this animates in, and I can kind of keep stacking effects onto it that way. And again, I can grab this, move it around, put it wherever I want it, and I don't have to reset any keyframes. So maybe this actually fades in there. Let's copy that to about there. Let's see. And when I've got all of that the way I want to, let's go ahead and name this blur. I can select all 3 of these effectors. Stop that. Grab all 3 of the effectors, fade up, fade down of blur. Go to animation, save animation presets, RK. Fade up, down with blur. And so now that becomes an animation preset that I can use again whenever I want to. So, I mean, that's a somewhat simple kind of example, but you ought to be able to start seeing how powerful they can get to be, especially when you really get comfortable with them and understand the different things that they can do. So I'm going to do this with a different example, and there's a lot of properties in these, so I just kind of figured that doing several different examples, just sort of threading things together, is as good a way to kind of demonstrate these as anything is. So let's do one let's do another one kind of like, let's do animate. This is bugging me. Animate, and let's try opacity. Let's just do an opacity one, something simple. So select that, text, animate. I'm just going to affect the opacity and set it to 0. And then the range, or go back into my range selector, and I'm just going to set my offset to -100, set that, go out here to 2 seconds, set it to 100, and then advanced, and let's change from square to ramp up. So they just kind of gradually come on. Let's take a look at, here at the bottom of the advanced set is a random order option that's turned off. So let's turn that on, which kind of brings all the characters in at different times. So we've got that happening. That's kind of cool. We've also got this random seed. So say I'm looking at it and it's like, I don't really like precisely which one letters come on first, but if I adjust this random seed, I can change how that randomization happens. So we've got that. Again, a pretty simple one. It's just the offset and an opacity, but that at least kind of gives us something to kind of work with. So that's just let's name that. So that's opacity, fade in, random. Maybe let's add another one. Let's do tracking. And oops. All right, I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to add another animator, but I did it with this one selected. If I add another animator, it's going to drop it in underneath this one, which generally isn't what I want. So I want to make sure that I deselect that one, and then I'll create a new animator for tracking. And let's set the tracking amount out. But notice as I stack these, this animator affected the first one because all I did was stretch the tracking out on it. So that just spaced everything out. But if I start it way out, set a keyframe, bring it back to 0, now when I bring this in, so I just kind of build one on top of the other. I don't really care for how that looks. So the one thing that's nice about, doing these in a stacked order is, if I don't like how that's working out, or I just want to view it without it, I can just hit the eyeball on it and disable it, see the way I had it. And I really don't like that tracking thing, so I can just select this animator and delete it, and it doesn't affect my base animation at all. So layering gives us flexibility insofar as how we, how we manipulate these and make revisions and changes and stuff like that. So that all worked out kind of cool, some kind of decent. Let's do this. Let's duplicate this type, the entire type animator, and I'm just going to change on this one. I want to turn on stroke and turn off fill. If I do that, it's starting to give it a bit of an outline. Let's make this, yeah, let's leave it at 2, see what we got. And then I'm going to go under my animator and change that. Remember I said that under advanced, that random seed, changing that number changes the order at which the characters come in. So let's try cranking this way up to like 106. But even from what I started with, this is, as I build and add to it, they get more interesting as I go. And it's still just kind of simple and basic animations, but duplicating the type elements. I can kind of build on that and do different things. So maybe we do, let's see. 106, random orders on. Maybe let's try some easing on this. Let's see what kind of effect that has. Yeah, kind of affects it again a little bit. So, but kind of neat effects. Wonder if I can tie. I'll try that another time. All right. So just kind of building those out. Kind of liking that. It's got kind of a glowy effect to it anyway. What if on the outline one, I go to my effects and presets panel. Let's see what kind of glows we've got. Let's just try a regular glow and see what we get. I don't know if there's going to be enough here to really affect anything or not, but let's see. Did I not? There we go. So let's set our glow intensity. See what we're actually getting, if anything. There we are. It is. Maybe it's better to put that glow effect. If I open this up, copy that, or I'm going to cut the glow effect from my outline type. Actually, I should name that. Animate outline. Let's go here and paste it there. Let's see if we can. Adjust that a little bit, change the intensity. Gives it a little bit of a glowy feel to it. Not a lot, but a bit. What if I change the color of my oops. Oh, I shouldn't have touched that. I gotta get that out of there. I have an old workspace set up that in this newer version doesn't work. So I may have to force requit. Darn it. Let's force quit that. There goes all that cool stuff. That's all right. All right. Relaunch After Effects. Yeah, ignore it. I need to get that preset out of there. All right. So anyway, composition. So that's how we can kind of stack and build things out. Let's do another item. I always like my initial type size. I always like to actually set things the way I want them to the right, rather than set it small, scale it up. I don't know, I feel like it's a little, keeps things clearer as to what I'm intending to do. So let's do that. All right. So let's try something else a little different we can do. And this isn't exactly a type effector, but so if I open up my type layer here, if I control click on my type, I could go down here to, in my menu, create. I can actually create shapes out of my text. So if I say create, I can do masks or text. I'm going to do shapes from the text. So we'll do that. It'll actually hide my original type layer, but it creates this is basically an outline of my type. So it's not live type anymore, it's artwork. But I'm just going to switch that to, actually let's open the contents. It's got every letter in as a path. Let's do, I want to do that. Let's take that, let's get my type the way I want it first, so I don't have to open every single one of those up. More options, path options, Oh, come over here. Stroke, fill, all right. There, that's the way I want it. So now I'll right click on that, go to create shapes from text. And now, because they're just paths, I can, here from the add menu, under contents, I'm going to do trim paths. And on my trim paths, if it adds it as another item here below all my text. So I'm just going to say, what do I want? Let's start it at 0. And there we go. So I want to set at the very beginning, I want to set my end, or set start to 100. I'm just going to use the start setting here. Go to 2 seconds, change it back to 0. We'll kind of draw every bit of type in separately. And I'm telling it right now that I want to trim all the multiple shapes simultaneously, so that's why it's doing them all together at the same time. If I change that to individually, it's kind of doing it backwards, but I should have set probably end. This is probably the one I should have animated, but you get different results given the decisions you make. So if I actually, let's undo that. Let's set that start back to 0. What if we did end at 0? 2 seconds, we'll set that to 100. So that goes beginning to end, start to end, whenever I do them individually. When I do them simultaneously, I get that. We can ease these in. Ease in. Actually, yeah, let's do ease in, ease out. And you just kind of build on these things. So I could turn my type layer back on, I think. Could I? No, because these are filled with black. But so just, some of the different things we can do to keep type animations from feeling so static and like everything else, And the goal is always to try to make things more interesting. I mean, stuff gets to be the more stuff you see, the more common things get. So the more you can kind of experiment and play around with some of this kind of stuff, try different things, the more unique the work you do becomes. So, all right. So let's give this a shot. Let's set the word roller coaster. And I'm going to fill it with white or with black. Let's give it let's do a solid background for now. All right. So we got roller coaster. So I want to go back and try to recreate this one I did earlier. Try and replicate this. So and it really is kind of using, I think, the same things that I've been doing, just, you know, instead of moving, I think the type ball comes in from the left to the right. But the more intriguing thing about this is that it's along that path, that I've animated the type along a path, and it's not, I mean, not the way you animate other objects along a path. Because it's still live type and it's still wholly editable. So I could change the type to anything I wanted to. But it just kind of comes in, sits at the top, and then sort of goes away. So that little type on a path thing, we'll just do that here real quick. So if I want to wrap type along a path, all that I really need to do, and I'm going to zoom out on this just a little bit. With roller coaster selected, I'm going to go grab my pen tool, and I'm just going to draw from down here up to here. And down back here again. So I'm basically creating a mask, but it's a single path instead of a closed mask. So we'll do that. And then if I open up my roller coaster type, you'll see that it now has this masks category, mask 1. If I open text, path options, I've got this path here, and if I set this to mask 1, it places it right on that line that I drew. And I can change the, it's got a bunch of different settings here. First margin, I'm just going to increase that, and that's going to move it kind of to where I want it to be. So I could animate my type along this path just by doing that. So I pull that down there, set a keyframe, come out to 2, pull this all the way out. I could do that, but not precisely what I want. I want to do that sort of stretch out along, which is going to work a different way. There we go. All right, so let's undo my animation along the path. I really just want, you know, we can set our first margin, we can set our last margin. If I actually set the first margin out here, perpendicular to the path is on. If I turn that off, turns the type on its side. back on. I could probably build on that and add a text animator to mess with the tracking amount. So all sorts of different things I can do with the path by itself. But I'm just going to use it to be sort of the base for my animator that I'm going to do. So I'm going to actually keep the path, but I want to go back to none. I want to work with my type individually for the time being. So, all right. So just like we had last time with the roller coaster, I'm just going to set animate, and we're going to do a position. And this time, instead of up and down, I'm going to use the first set of numbers and crank this way over here. Something like that. And then let's open my range selector, do made it a little bit advanced while I'm at it. All right. So let's do my characters, percentage, amount. You know, I'm going to go straight to ramp up because I feel like it's just a better movement overall to start with. And here at the beginning, we'll set the offset to minus 100. Come out here to 2 seconds and then run it up to 100. So when I do that, let's see what I get. So they all come in from the side, except that they're going from, so the first one comes in and then the other ones are coming in and overlapping them, which I don't think is a very good look. The effect I had before in the other one, the R comes in first. So I think what I want to do is change my ramp up to ramp down. Oh, and then I need to reverse my, see if I had minus 100 set there and positive 100 set, so I want to make these back, I want to flip these around. So this should be 100, this should be minus 100. Nope, that wasn't it. There we go. There, that's the effect I wanted. So that comes in. And then, so this will be my roll in. And let's duplicate that. And this will be roll out. And this one we're going to want to go there. And let's do, oh, so we're going to change this. Instead of, it's going to go out over here, so we're going to want this to be try 1807. What was this number? Minus 1807. All right. So let's just set that to 1807. And then U on my keyboard will show just my keyframes. One affects the other, so that's backwards. There. Let's see if ramp up will do the trick. Did I pick the wrong ones? Let's see. In. And let's see if that goes there. Want that to come in. And from there I want it to go there, I think. That's what I should have done. Let's try to ramp up there. Well, still didn't go right. Let's see how I did this in my original one. When everything goes south. So, roller coaster type, open that up. And then animator 2, I set 12. That was ramp up. Okay. Offset advanced. Ramp down and minus 100 and all right, hope I have those backwards. All right. Okay, back to there. Let's try that again. So duplicate that. So this one becomes 1807. Well, I know one affects the other, but that's kind of goofy. I hate it when it doesn't go right. Sometimes that happens. All right. Well, all right. Rather than mess with that, let's pretend that I got it all working right. Rather than make you watch me fumble with it. So, all right. Roller coaster type, this comp. So then once I've got my two animators there, but I also combined it with, I did this before, also a tracking animator that just affects the tracking on it, which is what gives it the animation of sort of stretching out, because I basically changed the tracking from the beginning to the end of the animation process. So the first animator actually brings it from the left into the middle, and then the second animator picks it up from there and takes it off screen. But then the animator 3 adjusts the tracking, takes it from 0 to like 45 or something like that as it goes off the other end, which gives it that nice kind of stretchy feel. But once I did all of that, so that's how I got it, got that effect. And then I added a 3D camera to the scene, changed my roller coaster type to a 3D object. Remember when we looked at 3D camera, we got to check that little box. And now, let's just hide that so we can view this. With my 3D camera, if I select it, I'll just use my orbit. I can adjust where my camera actually is. And give kind of a bit of a perspective view to it without having to do anything really all that crazy. And it needs to extend a little further than it is, but I can adjust that and fix that. But you can just So we kind of combine those effectors, the text animators, um, with a 3D camera or different effects to do different stuff, and kind of create some fairly dynamic sorts of things. I think kind of what happened with the one I was testing, every now and then whenever you work with animators, they get kind of a little on the confused side, and quitting and restarting fixes things sometimes, usually, but because what I was doing should have worked, but sometimes just fumbling around with it to get the way you want it. So added a little bit of motion blur to it, our switches down here on my type. I just turned on this motion blur. See if we turn that on and off. So, some different things we can do with type, but with animators kind of at the core of it all. But, like I say, you stack effects, which allow you to make modifications pretty easily. And then, or if there's a particular feature you don't like, it makes it super easy to turn it off and not affect everything else. So, stacking elements gets to be pretty powerful when you start realizing how things interplay. The same thing goes for effects. You can stack effects to get different things. Well, I'll save effects for another night, but that kind of gives us some different things to think about and to work with. So it's good to graduate, when animating text, it's good to graduate beyond just traditional transforms and get into these text effectors. There are a lot of tutorials online with text effectors that are worth looking at. There's a bunch of relatively short ones that they're quick to watch. They're a quick watch. Some that take a little bit longer, and I can pull some of those tutorials together too, so you can kind of take a look at those. The ones I think are better anyway. But all sorts of stuff we can do with type effectors. So the one thing I didn't even really get into too much was there's, I think I've got a build of this. Take a look at my animation presets. That wasn't the one I wanted. Oh, plan. I thought I had one where they actually overshoot and then drop back in, and that's kind of a nice effect. But I don't see it here. So, anyway, so there's, a bunch of different things we can do with them. So. That uses motions with a 3D camera. Right? So I'll pull together some other tutorials on text animators too. They're, nice and powerful. Definitely some fun, cool stuff you can do with them. So, but just as kind of an introduction to them, that's a little over an hour. So, any questions? No? All right. So that was all I was going to go over tonight, just sort of look at.